Chapter. I'm going to go with my first loser, Lavista Chennault, Colorado wide receiver. And so he's having surgery this week to repair his core muscle injury that he's had. And he just didn't run. I mean, it just wasn't what we expected as far as the 40-yard dash goes, 4.58. So on one hand, you could say he came in, they found out he's injured, therefore his stock is going to suffer. On the other hand, you could say, well, he ran a 4.58 while injured, but I'm still putting him in the negative column just because of this wide receiver class and the depth there. And if you show up to Indianapolis and you leave with any kind of question mark, immediately you're probably going to end up losing some money just because of the depth at wide receiver.
Yeah, you see, I think if anything, he's a winner out of this. Because, I don't think the wide receiver group across the board generally blew people away in terms of speed, right? Obviously, Ruggs was down in the 4.2s, but nobody else was. It wasn't that blazing a group of receivers. So for him, and the other thing is 4.58 was clearly not representative of his speed on tape, right? So everybody pretty much knows that that's not his time. And then it's like, oh yeah, he was injured. He's going to go get that taken care of. Now, he's basically not going to work out before the draft. He's put a 4.58 down knowing that he was injured. That's not at the worst time in the world for a guy anyway. Yeah. Everybody knows he can run faster than that. I think he wins.
Yeah,
he gets to chill for the next couple of months.
I understand that, but there's certainly going to be some teams that are debating between Lavista Chennault and I've seen your winners, Denzel Mims, right?
How dare
one of your winners.
Do you not understand teases? And this is not how the show works. It's supposed to be a reveal.
Okay. One of the guys that you listed as a winner is going to be competing with Lavista for draft position at 20, 25, 30, whatever that spot is. And some team's going to say, what's the last thing that we saw other than a pro day? Well, what's one of the last things that we saw? We saw your winner crush the scouting combine, and we saw Lavista not crush it and go get surgery. I mean, the recency bias is going to be an issue, and the teams that are looking for a wide receiver are going to have similar grades on players in that late first or early second round range, and I think this is going to affect things.
I mean, I think those two in particular are very different players, and I don't know that their stocks are that closely correlated. I think Mims' stock can go up without affecting Chennault's stock.
So one man's a loser is another man's a winner. I get what you're saying.
And that's how the draft works, right? That's how it only takes one. You only need one nut job.
Yeah, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, too, from LSU, another guy that ran 4.6. And it's like, if you just watch the tape, okay, he doesn't have breakaway speed, but he's a lot like David Montgomery. Like, he's going to make guys miss, and he's going to be really good up to 15 or 20 yards, which is the most important thing. But this number might make him drop. So some team's going to benefit from that. Just like some team will benefit from Lavista Chennault's probably dropping a little bit, but him personally in his wallet, perhaps a loser this week.
I mean, I can I can see overall the argument that enough teams would think the way you are, that overall his stock goes down, even if, I mean, it only takes one not to think that way to take him still, in the top 15 or whatever. But
anyway, let's get back through. Give me another loser, Sam.
All right, loser, Cameron Dantzler.
Who is?
Cornerback from Mississippi State.
Yes. We have to be very specific with everybody we discuss.
Cornerback from Mississippi State. So his thing is, he was like 6'2", looked long, lanky, the skinniest guy you're ever going to see, right, on tape. Now, usually you would imagine that translates to length and the ability to break up passes, all that kind of thing. So his numbers in college are excellent. But he came in with arms that were under 32 inches long.
Under 31 inches long.
Which I don't even understand how that's possible, given what he looks like on tape. Then compounded the problem by running in the 4.6s. Now, we talked before about how the combine is all about thresholds and just be better than this number. Now, that is a number that's not really like above the threshold. That's a number that didn't meet the threshold, and that's a problem.
Yeah, so it's interesting going through his comps over at our friends at mockdraftable.com, a nice, easy way to visualize historic percentiles, height, weight, speed, and all that stuff. We have Dantzler. They have Dantzler in the 94th percentile for height, 6'2", and then the 23rd percentile for arm length.
Yeah.
That is a fascinating difference. And then one of the last podcast that we discussed Dantzler, producer Ken said, Bengals fan over here, was like, hey, that's our Dre Kirkpatrick. The number 3 comp for Dantzler on Mock Draftable is Dre Kirkpatrick. And if you look at Dre, very similar, 81st percentile height, 6'1", and the identical 23rd percentile in arm length, 30 and 5/8 inch arms. Now, how much does the arm length matter? Maybe not for playing football, but the teams that do want that long press corner want to see 30, really want to see 32-inch arms.
At least.
Because they think that's going to help with press and all, which, again, in a vacuum, if you're just, two guys are identical and one guy has longer arms, in theory, you could teach him better technique, right? He could be a press man corner a little bit more effectively than the next guy. So as far as a loser goes, yes, that's not good, not because he changed, but because his measurements were unexpected.
Right. I mean, we talked about just needing to meet thresholds and show that you are a better athlete than X, because beyond X, a lot of evidence exists to say that that is a significant problem. Now, he didn't do that. His official time was 4.64. That's slower than Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman was in the 4.5s, I think, and he's held up as the poster child for slow corners in the NFL that have still succeeded. Excuse me.
It's kind of Tease Tabor-ish. I mean, not as bad, but
right. I mean, so that's the point, right? Is you're getting towards that Tease Tabor point of, I mean, this just cannot succeed at that level.
Right.
So there's nothing you can do about the arm length, right? That's just who he is. But the speed thing, he has a shot at a pro day or whatever to change that or to improve and to get a better time than that. Because right now, that time is going to take him off a lot of boards completely. Whatever about the arm length, there are teams that will live with that. There are teams that don't like it. That's a thing that, it's a sort of preference issue. But there is a lot of teams in the NFL that will just be taking this guy off their board if he doesn't improve on a 4.64.
Yeah, and again, I think when you talk about you're separating yourself from your peers, there's a whole bunch of cornerbacks in his range from a ranking standpoint. Who's going to be the 5th, 6th, 7th corner off the board? He's probably in that mix, and this week doesn't help him.
And this is a guy right now that's top 25 in PFF's big board,
right?
Combine stuff. He is an extremely talented player with great production. The college tape, all the stuff before this is great, but that has now raised a massive red flag as to his stock. So if nothing else, got to be a loser.
I do like the way he plays in off coverage, and this reminds me of Rasul Douglas a couple years ago. Long, he hasn't been great at the NFL level, but a long corner who probably plays better in off coverage, but has this size that teams are going to desire as a press corner, but maybe his best skills are, off zone, that type of thing. My next loser, AJ Epinesa, the defensive end, edge defender from Iowa.
Is he though?
So I think from, again, an NFL viewpoint, you feel much more comfortable drafting an edge that checks all the athleticism measures, especially because you could easily compare all the best edges, the J.J. Watts and Von Millers and now T.J. Watts, all these guys, Khalil Mack, they tick every box. Donnell Hunter, all these guys have the broad jump, they have the 3-cone, they have enough, the 10-yard burst. They have all that stuff. And a lot of times you just connect, well, these incredible athletes are the best guys that you see rushing the passer. But the comparison I used for Epinesa after watching him was Trey Flowers. It's what we have in our draft guide over at PFF.com. The Trey Flowers comp. Trey Flowers was a 4th rounder, a 1st-round talent. Epinesa is a similar player, similar production. I still think he's going to be a very good player. But again, I think when you're comparing him to the other edges, teams are going to feel more comfortable with a guy that's a better athlete. Are you questioning my loser again?
What? No.
Okay.
I questioned whether my point was that now he put this disastrous combine out there. There's a lot of people saying, well, this guy's not an edge. Can't play edge in the NFL with that athletic profile. That was my point. Not that he's a loser. That he might not be an edge anymore in the eyes of many. But I think you raise a good point, right? That our comp for him heading into the combine was Trey Flowers. And Trey Flowers has the same story, right? He's a guy who didn't have a good athletic profile at all, but was incredibly productive in college and has become a really good NFL player. So if that holds up, if that is who Epinesa is, it didn't change anything.
Then he's still probably the 2nd best edge defender in this class behind Chase Young, as he is on our board.
Now, they're very different players.
Very different.
So, if you want a specific thing, as an edge defender, you go for one over the other. But, yeah.
Yeah, so here's the thing about him, too. 6'5", 275. He's got the 34.5-inch arms. That's 85th percentile. So that's how he plays, right? He's got pop in his hands. He moves defenders. He'll jack them up. He doesn't have the best burst off the line. The 40-yard dash was 5.04. But all of that stuff was on tape.
Yeah.
Also, for a power player, only 17 reps on the bench. 5th percentile among edge defenders. How much do you care? I don't know. But you usually just like to say, this guy's strong. Let's confirm it with whatever drill is out there. So, all right.
Not, though.
Epinet is my second loser. Give me your third.
My third loser, Tarik Brown, defensive interior from Auburn.
Ooh.
Steven.
Are you ignoring the tape, Sam?
I'm not ignoring it. But again, I am raising a red flag that says this probably now changes what you think of him as, or what he can be at the next level. So it's not that he's a bad player, but he now, I think, becomes a specific type of interior defender in your eyes, right? So he's not going to be, I don't think he's even going to be a Chris Jones, right? A guy that's got all the strength in the world that can dominate and can be a great pass rusher. I think you're now throwing him into the category of Linval Joseph and Akeem Hicks and guys that they can generate pressure and they can be dominant even against the pass. It's just, it's not what they excel at, right? They dominate against the run. They control guys at the line of scrimmage, and they're so strong that they win enough pass rushing reps to make an impact or at least be on the field in those downs. But they're not real. I mean, Hicks, I guess, is the absolute apex of that kind of player, right? A guy that can legitimately be a difference maker as a pass rusher and a run defender. But, man, you're now aiming at a really small target.
Akeem Hicks?
Yeah.
Yeah, Akeem Hicks, I thought of him a little bit with Jajuan Kinlaw, the interior defensive lineman for South Carolina. I think Tarik Brown and Jajuan Kinlaw, they're the two guys, sitting atop our DI rankings, right? And I think both guys are similar. I thought both of them remind me a little bit of Hicks, and it took Hicks like 3 or 4 years to really get going, right? Here's my issue with Brown and the interior defensive linemen in general, right? It's such a draft of pass game playmakers this year. There's a few quarterbacks. There are a plethora of receivers. There's a ton of offensive tackle talent. And there's a decent group of cornerbacks, right? If I come out of the first round with Tarik Brown, no offense to Tarik Brown, with just like an interior defensive lineman who's a good run defender and maybe, an okay, pretty good to good pass rusher, I'm not feeling that excited in this particular draft. So like I used to go into my fantasy drafts and there's guys who like project okay. I just don't want them on my team. Like, hey, you're probably the 20th best player in this fantasy draft. I just don't want you. I'm just not going to pick you. I'll let somebody else get you. You're going to be fine. It's kind of how I feel about Tarik Brown and a lot of these interior players. I just don't want you to be my first-round pick this particular year, especially the more and more we learn about the true impact of the interior defensive lineman compared to edges and especially compared to corners and as you get further away from the ball.
I mean, I think if you're going to spend that a really high pick on an interior player, you want them to be an Aaron Donald style of player. Not, obviously you want them to be Aaron Donald, right? I.e. the best defender in the NFL. But ideally, what you really want is a guy that's just going to get a consistent amount of pressure constantly. And that's valuable. That's big. That's huge. But if you're not getting that, it's a lot harder. It's a lot of a harder sell. I just want to make the point of just how catastrophic Tarik Brown's measurables actually were. So he was in the 16th or lower percentile in the 40, the vertical, the 20-yard shuttle, and the 3-cone.
3-cone was the worst.
His 3-cone was 8.22 seconds, which is like, I mean, an aircraft could make that kind of turning circle. That's abysmal. Everything was bad, right? So he probably has better tape than almost anybody he gets compared to in terms of that style of player. Whether it's Linval Joseph, whether it's Akeem Hicks, whether it's Jordan Phillips, all those guys. He probably has the best tape of any of those guys coming out. But you now have to start talking about this guy. In order for him to be the dominant player that we thought he was leading up to this, like he needs to maximize every last inch of that. He basically... A lot of people talk about the combine so I saw Chris Ballard, the Indianapolis GM, talk about how we're in the elimination game, right? Our job here is to eliminate prospects from our list so that we end up with a draft board of guys we really like, right? And we eliminate them in a variety of different ways, whether it's measurables, whether it's tape, whether it's interviews at the combine.
Straight
This guy's
character.
a moron. We're not touching him. Whether it's character, whether it's medicals. Each one of these things is an exercise in eliminating the prospect pool and getting down to a finite group of guys. This is a reason to eliminate Tarik Brown on a lot of boards, right? It's sure, he might buck that trend, and the tape is so good that he might become a great player. On the other hand, do you want to be the guy playing those odds?
Yeah, I mean, so that's a great way to put it. And Mike Renner has made this point in the past, and I appreciate it. Right? It's like it's not as bad to just not take a player who ends up being good. Like everybody who's like, 32 teams passed on Russell Wilson, 31 teams, or really all 32. Everybody passed on Russell Wilson. Well, I mean, if you're just true to however you evaluate, and you just said, okay, we're just gonna pass on him. We're gonna eliminate him. I don't hate that. So like when people go, but who did you miss? And we say, well, Deion Jones, we missed. We didn't like him. The grades weren't great. He's become a spectacular coverage player. Whatever it is, you feel stronger about those, and just say, okay, those are outliers. Those are okay. But it's worse to completely go all in on a player and say, this is my guy, and then he fails, because that's who you're attached to. You're not attached to the guy that you didn't take. You're attached to the guy that you did take. So if you're like, hey, I'm eliminating, like if you're in the top 15 and you say, I'm not going to touch Tarik Brown, not just because of this, but because of positional value and whatever it might be, like I'm okay with that, even if he becomes a very good player.
Yeah, almost all of those you could have taken this guy posts, the retrospective hindsight 2020 things.
Yeah.
They almost always exist because the guy that you took sucks. It's not that, you didn't take Russell Wilson. It's that you pass up on Russell Wilson to take a guy that busted.
Or like a punter or whatever it is.
Right, or whatever. But it's always the contrast that makes it a story. It's not the fact that you didn't take him. It's the fact that the guy that you did take, you missed on.
Right.
And that's the problem.
So Tarik Brown, I think that's fair. I mean, with interior defensive linemen, we've seen Jonathan Allen in previous years with something similar, where it's like we wanted it. He dominated on the field. We wanted to see him dominate the combine, which he didn't do.
I think at the very minimum, it characterizes the kind of player he is, which in and of itself probably lessens his value.
Yeah, that's a fair way of putting it. All right, so wrapping up the losers. Wide receiver Jajuan Jennings from Tennessee. Again, you've got a guy, some people have called a fringe first rounder. He's up there on our board and runs a 4.72 at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Is he injured? Is he broken? Like everybody still references Keenan Allen's 4.71 that he ran. Keenan Allen was like legitimately hurt. And you just watched him play football and it's like, okay, he's a 4.5 guy at worst. And he's like one of the best route runners we've seen, right?
Even if he wasn't, he has the best release of anybody in the NFL, or at least one of the top.
But Allen also came into college as like an offensive weapon that they put the ball in his hands and he created big plays. Like he played fast, was injured, and ran 4.7. So please don't compare to Keenan Allen, what Jajuan Jennings is trotting out there, 4.72 plus a 29-inch vertical, like both second percentile type of rankings over at Mock Draftable, just not explosive at all.
So I watched this guy on tape when we were doing our receiver preview. Didn't really like him. And when, obviously we're coming at this behind the 8 ball in terms of analysis compared with our draft guy, Mike Renner. So I asked Mike, I was like, Mike, tell me why I should like Jajuan Jennings. And he told me contested catch guy. Or at least that was right up front with what he was saying. And my
There's your red flag.
On contested catch guys, if that's what you're leading with, it's concerning. So, yes, he can make some spectacular catches. On the other hand, if he runs a 4.7 and can't get open, that's not encouraging.
I don't know if there was a tweet from Jennings' agent defending this, but I just want to piggyback on this. When the Schefters and Rappaports and other reporters of the world basically copy and paste the tweet or the text that was given to them from an agent, I just die a little inside every time. Die inside a little bit. I hate it. So you run a bad 40, and then I'm your agent, and I'm like, mass text to NFL media. Sam really tweaked something early in the day, but he battled through to really attempt his 40. He's a competitor, after all. We're going to come back at our pro day stronger than ever.
It feels like
I'm disappointed in my effort. However, I just couldn't let all of my teammates down. I had to battle through. Therefore, my time that was subpar, let's not focus on it too much. because I'm just a competitor and I fight and I battle and I'm a little hurt.
It feels like at the very minimum, you would at least reword the text before you send it out into the world.
I mean, it's straight copy. Like this,
Right.
The agent sends it to like 30 people and they just like, well, let's just tweet this out.
If just because you know everybody else is going to be doing that, why wouldn't you like reword it so it's clear that we didn't just all get the same group text and tweet it
Well, the
out?
best part was it isn't just like player X was hurt. It's like player X was hurt and he battled his way through, right? I mean, it's always, something about their character or something like that. I mean, it's just, look, you got to keep your sources happy.
Right.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.